that you wouldn't find in the regular way that we tune guitars. And so I believe it's a process that's very workable, you know, and I believe that you can heal through music, you know. You can reach a lot of people. It's something you can't see, but you can feel. It's like a magnet, you know, you can't see the magnetism, but you can feel what a magnet does when you're using it. You can see that there's a signal being sent and being received, and there's a connection, you know. So what you're saying is absolutely right. There is a definite connection for healing powers.
Was it completely intentional in that particular song? Do you remember?
I kind of experimented with different chord progressions and things, you know, and ones that made you feel good. And that progression made me feel very good. And it also made Bob feel good. So the song came about from that, you know. But part of it was accident and part of it was just experimentation. And, you know, later on developing that, hey, this works, you know. It's true. I hope that answers your question.
I think there are a couple more questions.
Hey, I have two quick questions. The first question is on that day, on Valentine's Day, and when you got those calls, what was like the first thought in your head? Like, did you get anxious? Did you get excited, like, about these two things? And like, how did you feel, basically?
Well, when I got the call from Stevie Wonder, I was kind of like, I started to sweat. I didn't believe that, you know, I could get a phone call from Stevie Wonder. I got a little bit nervous, and he kind of cooled me out, you know. He said, oh, everything's cool, it's, you know, just Stevie Wonder, you know, you know. And then when Bob asked me to join the Wailers on the spot, I got goosebumps, you know. I mean, more than normal, you know. And that's when I started pinching myself, because I thought maybe I was having a deja vu or something. I don't know if you ever had, anyone ever had a deja vu? And it felt like a deja vu, you know. It was kind of airy, like, you know, a little bit scary. At the same time, you don't want to like panic, you know. But there was also a joy in it as well. It was like the work that you put in, somebody was watching and decided to give you a reward. You know, and like I said, I used to practice like 8 hours a day at that time. And the reason why I did that was because whenever I went for an audition, I wanted to get people's attention within 30 seconds. You know, and I wanted to be at least 3 times better than anybody else who was auditioning. And so I would try it out sometimes, and I'd show up at the audition, everyone's fooling around, and I would play something, and then I'd notice within like 15 to 30 seconds, everybody would turn and look at me. So I knew it was working. So I knew that the practice that I was doing was having an effect. And it actually happened to me when I played with Ike and Tina Turner. I went to the United States and I met Sly from Sly and Family Stone, and he was very good friends with Billy Preston. And I went on tour with Billy Preston, and then we went to hang out with Sly, and Sly had one of those campers, you know, those kind of big home on wheels, and he'd drive around LA, and him and his dad would just hang out and drive around LA all day. You know, that was home, and they would have everything in there, clavinet, keyboard, drums, guitars, everything. And we ended up at the studio of Ike and Tina Turner, and I was just sitting in the corner, and there was a bunch of Ike's guitars, and I didn't touch any of them. I took mine out, and I started to play. And within 30 seconds, Ike ran over to me and said, where did you learn to play the wah-wah like that? You know, and I was just checking to see if it still worked or if it would work in that environment. And within 30 seconds, he said to me, I need you to play on my album, but you got to play my guitar. And I said, no, I can't play your guitar. He goes, yeah, you got to play my guitar, my session. And everybody looked at me, and I said, no. And everybody looked at me again. He told Ike no. I don't know if you know the history of Ike Turner, but it's somebody you don't say no to. And he said to me, okay, play your guitar. And then I recorded 3 songs with him, and he never gave me credit on the album. But it's okay. I mean, like, he was the guitar player for the band. It was his band, you know, so obviously he wants people to think that he was playing, which I understand, you know. I mean, it's not fair, but what's fair in life, you know? But I was happy that he allowed me to play on the record. You know, I know about it, so it's not like there's some things that you know for yourself and you don't need everybody else to know about it. You know, like one of my favorite things to say is the greatest thing in life is to know whatever the subject is or the topic. When you know, you know. Nobody can take that away from you. It's like you don't have to question it or think about it or wonder about it. Some things you just know. And maybe you don't even learn it. It's just something that comes from within, but you know. So I knew I played on it. I knew what I did, and I was happy with that. So I had no bad feelings with Ike, and I know his history, so. But he's still a good guy. I mean, what he did with R&B and rock, brought them together, was phenomenal. You know, songs like River Deep, Mountain High, and all those songs he did with Tina. It's amazing, amazing guy.
I think there was one more question in the front.
I hope I answered both parts of your question.
Actually, I was just gonna ask the second part.
Yeah, please.
But
No, please answer. There's no rush, there's no rush.
it's just on a lighter note. What happened with your date on Valentine's Day?
What happened with my what?
With your date, you were gonna have like.
Oh, my
you were
date
gonna go
that
out with your
evening.
girlfriend, yeah.
I never made it. I never made that date. And my girlfriend was angry. But she stayed my girlfriend, though. She forgave me. When she heard the story, she was, okay, I'll let it go this time.
Sure, you got a call from Stevie Wonder, whatever.
Yeah, you know, whatever.
And actually, and one more, there's actually 2 questions. So maybe if you could ask yours and then yours in the back, and then you could answer them both.
Okay,
No,
so
I don't mind. Go ahead.
I think that like London and England in like the mid to late 60s was like one of the most like amazing times for music in the recent history. And since you were there to see everything, like I wanted to ask you what do you think were some of the elements that contributed to that kind of environment, especially in terms of like the attitudes of the people involved, like the musicians, the bookers, the club owners, and that kind of thing?
Well, there was a lot of confidence. The fact that the Beatles and the Rolling Stones were so successful, and then Led Zeppelin and many others, there was a lot of confidence that whatever they packaged and shipped back to America would be successful. A lot of it came from America. Like it was right under your nose and you couldn't see it, and now we've got it and we're going to sell it back to you. And they were very confident because of the success of it. I mean, like, you know, the Beatles was phenomenal. I mean, the songs and the response and, you know, like 5 songs in the charts at once. And, you know, those things never happened before. And like, you know, when the Rolling Stones came and, you know, I think they did Ed Sullivan's show on TV in America. That was their first TV appearance. And it was like James Brown and the Rolling Stones. And they said, well, the Rolling Stones have to go on first and then James Brown. And then James Brown said, you know, I'm not going on after the Rolling Stones. And then the Rolling Stones says, we're not going on after James Brown. And eventually, James Brown went on first. So when Mick Jagger went on, he just let it all out. Dancing, everything. And they became an instant hit, you know. The next day it was like he was on par with James Brown, which is a pretty hard thing to do, you know. And so they had a lot of confidence and they put a lot of work into it. They're very like, kind of like scientists, you know. They go in depth with music and why the instruments sound so good and why the overall feel was so good. And they really tried to get to the core of what was the magic that got people attracted. A, they were very tight because they knew what they were doing very well. And B, it was a repackaged sound. It's a sound that you people in America grew up with but never paid attention to it. and it was a very harmonious and vibrant sound, So they were very confident. You had the Police, you had the Sex Pistols, you had the Specials. It was like the punk movement, the rock movement, the blues movement, the pop movement, and then you had people like Tom Jones, Emperor Dink, and everybody was covering every facet and genre of music and packaging it and sending it back to America. And America was where you made the money. America's got millions of clubs. In England, you go up and down, once you've done it, And so, it was well appreciated too and loved by everybody. So they had a lot of confidence about what they were doing. And then they had the clothes to go with it because they were very, fashion conscious and then they had the drugs to go with it as well. And everything was just like the chemistry of the whole thing. I'm not saying the drugs were a good thing, but it kind of freed them up in a way where they didn't feel inhibited, Not that you should use drugs in that way, but it allowed them to be psychedelic, for example, and be adventurous and be universal and flower power. And then it took off in America as well. And then it became one big global thing, So it was a very beautiful time to be in music and to see it like out of nowhere become everywhere,
I think there was one last question in the back.
There's another one here too.
Hello.
Been waiting for a long time. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, would Bob ever inspire you and give you the motivation when you had your days where you had no motivation at all into playing guitar?
Can you say that again?
Would Bob ever inspire you when
Inspire me?
Yeah, and motivate you when you needed the motivation? And what would he say to you when you
Wow,
needed to
when
get
I
back
first met the band, he was very hard on me. Like, because he gave me these albums to learn, and I figured I learned everything, I got it. And then he came up to me in a sound check and said, yeah, I know you're, goodish guitar player. And people know about you and stuff, but my music is different. It's not about the notes that you play, it's about the feeling and how you project that feeling. And it was just me and him. He didn't do it in front of everybody, he just pulled me one side. But he was very because I was kind of a bit burnt out from having to do all this swatting and everything. And he says, you don't have it. You don't have it yet. You need to go back to the beginning and think about the feel of the music, the soul of the music. Because every music has a soul and a feeling and a drop and a space. And you can't cover up that space because then you spoil everything. It's not the same anymore. The essence and chemistry is lost because you're not in tune with everyone else. So I called my mother up and I said, hey, I'm leaving this band. And my mother is typical Jamaican, old school, a lot of discipline. She said, you sit your little butt down, you listen to what Bob's got to say and learn. And then she called Bob and said, if he doesn't behave himself, slap him. I said, you can't tell Jamaican guys that. I mean, they'll slap you. But my pride in a way was kind of hurt because when he was talking to me, my eyes bubbled up with water. I'll never forget. I was ready to, the drops were ready to come down. And he saw that. He saw it, the water bubble up in my eye, and he kind of backed off and said, oh, you kind of got it a little bit. And then my mom told me to stay, don't leave, because I thought, man, this guy's too tough, He wants everything super perfect, and I'm not going to get it in a couple of days, But anyway, I went back to the beginning, and I worked with the bass player and locked in with him and the drummer more. In fact, I was more conscious about locking in with them. Rather than just playing the right notes and having a great time, I was now playing the right notes, having a great time, but being in the pocket with them. Because that's very important to reggae, especially Bob Marley's reggae. There's a space where you don't play. It's like Miles Davis would say, it's not when you play is when you don't play, or the space that you leave in the music that creates that chemistry, that hypnotic chemistry and that magic. And I wasn't really fully aware of the magic and the soul of that particular brand of reggae. I wasn't listening to the drummer, because the drummer, when he played, there's a space where he doesn't play. And then his kick drum is like the axis of the music. It's like the center of gravity. So when he hits that kick drum, everybody doesn't play for a split second. So it's that little breath right there. You don't play in that breath. If you play in it, then you don't know what you're doing, because you're not in that same groove, and you're not helping to enhance that hypnotic magic that Bob Marley's music had, or does have. So I became more aware of the root of the music, that we're all working under the same root. So the drummer comes first. The first sound of music, drums. If you don't play with the drummer, you're not going to lock in, no matter what kind of music you play, what band you play with. It starts with the drums, the bass. And you notice most bands who are really good, the drum and bass player are usually very tight. Even on recordings, like the Motown recordings, you have James Jamerson and the drummers that they had. It's very tight. You know, it just hypnotizes you right away. Rolling Stones, they got a very simple drummer, but he's very tight. And he's very, like him and the bass player, Bill Wyman, they locked in. You know, they're not the greatest musicians in the world, but they lock in. Same thing with the Beatles, with Ringo and Paul. They have a special thing where they lock in. And they don't really talk about it, but they have an understanding about it. And they develop it through their relationships or whatever they go through to get to where they want to get through. And so that's when I discovered that I also have to listen to the soul of the music, whether it's salsa, Cuban music, Brazilian music, Jamaican music, British rock music, punk music, jazz. They all have this chemistry about them where you're supposed to leave that space. And if you cloud it up, you lose the whole essence of where it's coming from. So that's something very special about music, whether it's classical music or jazz or blues, rock, folk. There's always something there, you know, like even bossa nova or, you know, like music from Brazil. You know, there's a definite soul to it. Or like Spanish music, like, you know, you feel the soul when you understand, or you start to understand music itself. There's a soul there. There's like something magical about it. You see like somebody dancing to Spanish music and they have a thing and then and you get it right away that there is a soul in that music, just like Cuban music or, you know, rock music. There's a soul there, Indian music, you know, like whether it's quarter notes or half notes or whatever. There's something there that you need to learn to really achieve in that genre of music. And all the top musicians, like Stevie Wonder, like Ravi Shankar, they all know that it exists. And they look for it in the people that they work with, that they also understand. And it's not even something they talk about. They usually know about it before they even get together. And the chemistry works because they're all aware of it. It's not something that happens by accident. Like if you listen to most reggae, there's a difference between the one-drop reggae that Bob Marley plays and what an English reggae band would play or a Brazilian reggae band would play. They're not really aware of that space. So when you listen, they don't have that same feel that we had with the Wailers, because they're not aware that that space is not supposed to be touched. It's supposed to be allowed to just breathe. And that's where the magic is. So it's very, very, very important to study the soul of music, not just the notes. You know, the feel. People say, oh, you got a great feel, because you're listening and you're not playing against a metronomic feel. Music is very metronomic once you know the timing. And if you play with that metronomic feel, it will sound better. You can play around it, you can play in and out of it, but you always come back to that beat where it's the dominant factor in the music. Even if it's classical music, you can hear it. You can hear, like, classical music will make you cry. You go to, a movie and there's one little piece in the music and you find yourself crying, and the music does that. That soul makes you, it touches you, like you said before about the healing powers. There's something with music that it's in our DNA. It's in our seed. We're all born with it. Like babies, you don't have to teach them how to dance. They hear something and they start dancing. It's in their DNA. It's in their seed. It's from time of creation. They say, a lot of people say that life is rhythm. Life is created out of a rhythm, the rhythm of life. Like the sperm and the egg get together and there's a rhythm. There's a dance with that sperm trying to be the first one to get in there, And it's very real. It's difficult to explain. It's not really that complicated, but it's not really easy to explain. It's something that, you acquire it, you learn about it, and then you use it, and magic happens, And the more you look for it, the easier you find it. It's just by listening. If you listen to somebody like James Taylor and the way that he sings, and when he stops singing and when he comes back in, there's a rhythm to it. He just doesn't come in and come out and come in and come out. There's a feel to it, and you start to feel it, like Neil Young or somebody like that, or Stevie Wonder. There's a rhythm to the way that they project that sound that comes from within them, and there's a rhythm to it. And once you understand that, it takes you to another level. I think.
I think it's also probably no better time than what you've just said to end. And I know you had a question.
For dinner,
but,
right?
Pardon? No.
I'm joking.
No, but you're going to be around for a while. So if there are some folks that have some questions during lunch, you can come and ask Junior. And I would like to thank you.
Did you get to ask your question?
Uh,
No, I want to answer it, really.
Okay.
Because you've been so patient.
Well, it might be a bit long or too personal.
No, it's okay. I'll make it short.
Okay, let's try. And thank you, by the way, for
My
sharing
pleasure.
and playing. And it seems like the music you've been engaging or playing for us has this positiveness to it, and like there was some talk about healing, and even the minor chords has this like silver lining around them.
Right.
Do you indulge or engage with, let's say, sad or destructive music sometimes, or do you feel opposed to it? What is your relationship with things that doesn't
I'm
have
definitely
this
involved with
positiveness?
it. Definitely. Like, for example, Stir It Up. It's in a major key, right? And it has that very happy, bouncy. And then other songs, like Natural Mystic, is in a minor key. It's kind of like a blues format. And it has that kind of mystical, sad way about it, It's like, it's not really a happy, bouncy kind of thing, but it's not negative. So there's difference in the chord structure that you choose to express the feeling. And major and minor is definitely different. One's very easily, like major, always makes you feel bouncy and up kind of thing. And minor is a bit more kind of blues, kind of like a little bit sad, but not totally sad. And it's more like something you'd use to, express a message, or you want to get somebody's attention on a not too, like, playful mood, a more serious mood. You maybe use a minor, And if you listen to a lot of movies, or you watch a lot of movies and listen to the music they use for certain scenes, and you try to figure out what the chord is that's predominant, you'd realize that they chose it especially to express that moment, that mood that they're trying to get. So it's very relevant, like you're saying. Thank you.